Yep, that's on. Green on.
Okay.
So everybody's green light on their microphone.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Brian Kent. I'm a member of the Complete Streets Advisory Committee, and I am going to start the meeting on December 12th, 2023. Our first order of business is a roll call. Let's start with the members and then we can move to the ex officio members. I'm again, Brian Kent.
Patrice Granatowski. Lori Hendrickson.
Tom Olson.
I'm Cindy Berry, representing the Ledgelight Health District.
Sure, I'll start. I'm Deb Jones. I'm the Assistant Director of Planning and Development.
Greg Hanover, Director of Public Works.
Mark Berry, Director of Parks and Recreation.
John Burt, Town Manager.
So we have an agenda. Some of these items are standard, but we don't have any content for them yet. So the next item is communications. I don't have anything to report on communications. Anyone else?
I might be an attendee. Okay.
Is she participating, John?
No, I think she's just, yeah.
Okay. All right. We have received emails from the town clerk about just setting up this meeting. The next item is acceptance of minutes. This being our first meeting, there are no minutes to review, so we'll move right into new business. First order of business is the Complete Streets Advisory Committee election of officers. So we have a protocol to follow here, and the first item is to elect a chair pro tem to conduct the order of the election of officer. It's a formality, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Can we agree to?
Everybody okay with, yeah.
We will set aside the formality. Yeah. Okay. All right. So to begin with, we need an election or a nomination. We'll start with chair.
I nominate Brian.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay. Election of chair of Brian Kent passes. The next item is election of vice chair. Well, you need a nomination.
I'll move for Patrice Granatowski.
I'll second.
All third.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And the third officer to nominate is secretary. Can I have a nomination for secretary?
Can I elect Tom Olson?
Nominate.
No.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, carries. That was very efficient. Good job. Okay. We're moving right along. We might get you out of here at 4:20. Okay, next up, another essential item is setting our annual schedule. Today's meeting is a Tuesday at 3:30, and I think we agree that the meeting needs to start in the later part of the afternoon to accommodate those of us who are working jobs that don't allow us the freedom to meet earlier than that. Other options would be evening meetings. So I think the best thing to do is just to open the floor for discussion on folks' preferences for when we should have our meetings. And I think to begin with, it's safe to assume, pending your input, that we would meet on a standing basis on a monthly schedule, and that we could schedule special meetings bi-weekly or as often as necessary.
I agree with the monthly meetings. I have a lot of flexibility being a retiree, so afternoons, evenings, more flexible, or else you can kind of split the difference like the Conservation Commission does at 5 o'clock.
Okay, so this time slot works pretty well for you then, because you just hang out here. after this meeting.
No, I wouldn't say I hang out here, but I have a lot more flexibility because of all I do is volunteer. Tuesdays is really the best day for me.
Tuesday's the best day for you.
Because I have less other volunteer commitments.
Okay. Well, I have to be contrary here a little bit because I tend to have a Tuesday afternoon meeting at 4 o'clock. That's been quite frequent, and will be for the next several months. It's not weekly, but it is happening right now on a bi-weekly basis. And there was one today that I'm not attending for this. So it's a little problematic for me to have a Tuesday 3:30. It could be, I could do an evening or I could do a different day to be on the safe side. So any comments on that?
As of right now, I work at Grasso, so I could be here really anytime after 3 for any of the days. In the spring, I'm sometimes coaching and later would be better, but I could always be flexible for those days. So if we wanted to keep 3:30, that's fine for me as well. Any of the days of the week work for me.
Cindy, do you have a preference?
Generally 3:30 works really
That's a good
well for
time for you.
me. I'm often doing education programs in the evening, so
Mhm.
the 3:30 time
Mhm.
works
Mhm.
great.
And the same thing with staff. We all have a lot of different
Sure,
night
sure.
meetings. So,
Sure.
and we won't all be here every time. Depends on the topic and, if we're presenting something, that type of thing.
Okay.
So
would
Wednesday work at 3:30?
Wednesday works fine for me.
Yeah, I can work around that.
Okay.
Which Wednesday?
That's our next,
Probably not the second Wednesday, right? For
Right,
staff
RTM,
purposes,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So first Wednesday, third Wednesday.
first or third. So here we are on the 12th of December. I think we'd like to meet sooner in January than later in January with the issues coming up. But then again, there's not a whole lot that's going to be happening between now and then. Like nothing's going to be happening between now and then. So maybe we should go for the third week of every month.
So the next one would be the 17th.
Mhm.
In January.
And then this through. CR2.
We'll have to double check that it's
Depends.
free. It should be. Deb, can you check on that?
And John, they'll continue to be a Zoom or a virtual option.
Yes.
Okay, so I hear a consensus to have our monthly meetings on the third Wednesday of each month at 3:30 in the afternoon, with our next meeting on January 17th. Do we need a motion to approve that?
Yes.
We do. Okay.
So
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Well done. Okay, so now we're into the various issues that are on our collective plate as a Complete Streets committee. But I think before we get into the various issues, I think I want to switch items here. They're not really in order anyways. Well, my agenda is out of order. So I think what we want to do is item 3 right now, which is complete street policy. Is that the same for everyone? Item 3,
Should
complete
be.
street policy. Right. Okay. So that's where I want to start the discussion, because you all have access to it. If you haven't already perused it, it's on the town website. And I think I'm getting positives from everybody that you're familiar with it. And, it's a document that lays out vision, goals, and principles. And the vision, of course, is just to improve Groton rights of way, to make them safer for all users and to expand the network. And the goals get a little more specific, and the principles just dictate or guide the town in kind of who this is for, why we're doing it, and how, and less of how to do it, but more about who and why we're doing it. And also some of the foundations for the need for a municipality to do it. It follows state law. It follows prevailing best practices, and it's becoming more and more common in communities to codify a complete streets approach. So the very last page of the policy, if you have a copy in front of you, refers to the chapters. Chapter 8 refers to the Complete Streets Advisory Committee. That's us. That the town will form this committee, and that our responsibility is solely related to complete streets interests, or primarily, I guess you could say. It doesn't really differentiate whether it's primary or strictly, but the standing committee shall be responsible for providing guidance for the implementation of complete streets throughout the community. So essentially, we are here to guide the town staff. We're not really here to be out on the streets advocating for this project or that project. We are more of a advisory body to the town staff. So we have to be careful not to kind of lose track of our charge. So so that's just something that can kind of muddy the water if we wander too much from our purpose and for what we are empowered to do here. And those are laid out in eight items. Provide input. That's what I've just been referring to. Advise the staff. Again, that's what I've been referring to. Make recommendations on short and long range transportation plans. And so there's going to be quite a bit of that coming up. Some of you are already, kind of tuned into the different plans and projects that are coming our way. Review and recommend transportation project prioritization. Funding is related to bicycle and pedestrian issues. So that's just part and parcel of the previous items. Assist in the development and implementation of the Town of Groton Community Connectivity Study and monitor and promote its implementation. So what that refers to is what is now named the Groton Complete Streets and Trails Project. So it's just changed names, but it hasn't changed purpose. And we'll talk about that as a separate item. So we'll keep going here. Assist and advise the Groton Planning and Zoning Commission with respect to pedestrian and bicycle facilities and parking. So, Groton Planning and Zoning receives requests and applications from private developers, individuals, and even the town itself. When it's embarking on a community project, it still goes through a review process. And so from time to time, we'll be asked to comment or to look at some of the applications, site plans, and that sort of thing, and provide some input. So those could come up at some of our meetings. Assist in the implementation of the transportation component of the plan of conservation and development. The cycle for the POCD is every 10 years. The next update is due in 2026. So there's a nice lead time for us to be influential in how the POCD refers to bicycle and pedestrian and complete streets and trails. So that works out really well for us. And lastly, coordinate with adjacent municipal and other regional public entities, such as Southeast Connecticut Council of Governments, to promote creation of network pedestrian and bicycle facilities. And we're going to talk a little bit about that also today in more detail. One thing that I glossed over, it was mentioned up here in number 4, review and recommend transportation project prioritization and funding. I think we can be a good resource for the town because we may learn about funding opportunities that the town itself may not be aware of, or we can even assist in some of the grant applications or gathering data that would support grant applications. So I think that's going to be a real benefit for town staff to use us as a resource when it comes to funding opportunities. So with that said, are there any questions, comments about the policy and about the committee's purpose and scope of work? Okay, good. All right. So continuing in the order of the agenda here, number 4 is 2024 Complete Streets and Trails Plan. And that is a project that is coming soon. I think the startup will be at the beginning of January. There was an RFQ, request for qualifications. That was included in the packet, so you may have had a chance to look at that. It's of course quite detailed and thorough, gives a consultant clear guidance on what's expected for the project.
My
Two
question,
companies.
just so I can interrupt it, who put all this together? I saw some of this is boilerplate, but some of it is obviously someone from the staff. Was this done by Parks and Rec?
Yeah,
Planning and
it was
Zoning?
a collaboration between Parks and Rec and myself and Kate Rattan contributed from
Okay.
the Council of Government.
Yeah, I was just wondering where it all got generated from. It seems like there's a lot of meat to it already.
Yeah. So, Mark, I don't know if you want to take it from here, but the consultant and where you are with respect.
So we sent a first draft of the contract out to the consultant. They've replied back. It's currently under review. Brian is looking at it just based on his professional experience with doing these types of plans. Greg is also reviewing it, and I also sent it to the purchasing agent for him to review. So once I get all of those comments back, it will go back to the consultant, and hopefully we'll have an agreement that can be signed. And the plan would be, as Brian said, probably sometime early to mid January, we would start the whole process with a kickoff meeting.
So the consultant has already been selected.
There's a preferred consultant identified.
Mhm.
We're not naming names because we're still going through the process.
Okay.
But yes, yes, both we interviewed the consulting teams that put forth proposals and have identified a preferred consultant.
Thank you.
So to keep us informed of the schedule for the project, the first scope of work for that project is information data gathering. So, in the winter when there aren't people out on bikes and walking as much, and the consultant's really not going to be, out on the streets gathering information from users. They're going to be in their office gathering information from geographic information systems and from data that the town provides. And they'll be looking at all of the previous studies and work that's been done so far to date. And then they'll be prepared to just hit the ground running in the spring with public input, outreach, and more of a boots on the ground presence. And then it becomes a real intensive process of connecting the dots, as far as a network is concerned, figuring out where people want to go, need to go, would like to go, are currently going as far as biking and walking and using trails, and then putting that into a mapping system so that it can be incorporated into the town's GIS database. And then the town has a very user-friendly interface for comparing, the proposed network along with, say, site plans that are submitted or municipal projects like schools and parks that come up. And it's really it's a quantum leap from what we currently do. What we currently do is we roll out a 20-year-old map, and we get our highlighters and red pens out, and we figure out where the gaps are and where things go. So this is going to be a big improvement. We've also, town has asked the consultant to prepare up to 5 detailed concept plans for, call them hotspots or call them priority places where a complete streets project or a trails project can have a big impact, and also is highly eligible for grant funding, so that we have these grant ready site plans and concept plans that the town can just insert into a grant application. And that is a big benefit. That's not something that most plans come with, and it's a little bit of an innovation from our point of view that helps the town. Another innovation is they're going to prepare a I'm trying to remember how we described it, but it's like a demonstration sites for where we could do these quick build or tactical urbanism projects where we might take an intersection that has tons of pavement and paint out bump outs and paint out a little micro parklet and that sort of thing, and use temporary materials to demonstrate whether it is feasible or not, so that if it is embraced and accepted, it could become a permanent project. With this data supporting its conversion. We're also asking them to prepare a matrix that predicts the DOT's schedules for repaving and repairs and maintenance on the state roads, so that the town has an opportunity to engage with DOT in advance of those projects and perhaps have influence over complete streets improvements. And that's something that's really been difficult across this state to have enough warning. In fact, I think we were calling it early warning matrix, to have enough warning that that the town could have influence over a DOT project. That's just been really hard. And so that's another piece of it. There's more to it, but I don't want to go through all of it. If there are any questions or comments about it?
As far as for scope, does this include all the subdivisions like the city and Noank and Groton Long Point? Or is it just the town separate from with those other areas being separated out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's kind of been a real thorny subject, I think, for just about every townwide plan that Groton has undertaken. It definitely does not include the city of Groton. All right. And it includes these subdivisions like Groton Long Point to the extent that the consultant just is touching base with them and perhaps having a Zoom meeting with them to just let them know this is going on and these are the parameters of the project. But I don't think that there's any planning to be done in those subdivisions unless subdivision asks for it. Right. With respect to Noank is part of the town. It's not really, it's got a zoning commission, right?
And its own fire district.
And a fire district. Yeah. And actually, it's
and its own parks department too.
It's not on our agenda, but Noank is embarking through the town on a Main Street streetscape improvement project with some of the side streets incorporated as well. And so really that's the heart of Noank when it comes to pedestrian. And
that's really being done by Public Works.
And Public Works through with a consultant that's been hired, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that kicked off with an open house last week. Surveyors are going to be there soon. Right?
Yeah, should be here probably Friday. Early next week we'll start surveying out there.
Yeah. And Noank has all kinds of infrastructure issues that need to be solved. And that just gives you an open door to also do pedestrian, bicycle, streetscape, placemaking. I think the result of that project is going to be just wonderful, and looking forward to it. Okay, any other questions, Cindy?
Yeah, I just have, actually I have two questions. One is, will this study be prioritizing? I feel like that's sometimes a challenge because there are so many options for projects.
Right. Definitely it is. We've asked them to prioritize by creating concept plans for 5 of the most important places. And we're not suggesting what those are yet. They could be corridors of roadway. They could be intersections. They could be trailheads or trail crossings over a certain road. They could be any number of things. And I think what might make most sense is if we have 5 different types that represent 5 priority places, so that they can be perhaps modeled in more places after they've been implemented. And that tends to be a successful process if you can establish a successful first project, like a prototype project in the community. It's much easier to build on that and to replicate it in similar ways elsewhere. So that's the hope, is that we get the ball rolling this way with some real built projects recommended as priorities.
And my other question is there a role for this committee in terms of that work, or is there a need
Yeah.
for the contractor to?
Yes. So we have been identified, so the Complete Streets Committee has been identified as a stakeholder in the project that will meet on a periodic basis with the consultant and with representatives of town departments, primarily Parks and Rec and Public Works and Planning. And so really it's our entire committee of all of us meeting probably on a more frequent basis, or perhaps on a different meeting schedule for that project, to interact with the consultant and to bring up issues or bring up insight that they may not be aware of, because they are not from Groton. They're from other parts of Connecticut. They have various levels of familiarity with the town. I would like to get them all here and put them in a van and drive them around to begin the project and point out a lot of things that may not otherwise be obvious. What makes it tricky besides the subdivisions is we've also got state parks and state land that are heavily used for recreation and trails, but our consultant can't design anything on Haley Farm or in Bluff Point. And so we have to, they need to be very clear about the distinction between what's town and what's not, and how they interact with each other. So that's what I think we want to try and do. And the committee can be very helpful in educating the consultants. All right, our next item is the update on the plan of conservation development. Now, Patrice brought this up, and I defer to you if you have any experience in an update. I have not worked on a POCD myself.
No, I certainly do not. I just was curious if we would have to have a role in this and what that role would be.
Mhm.
I will defer to Mr. Olson.
As far as putting my Conservation Commission hat on, we have been interfacing with the POC staff for the planning staff, because it's really, the POCD belongs to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They're the lead organization for this. And so but because it's the plan of conservation and development of the Conservation Commission has been trying to insert itself more into the process. We basically have broken up and put areas together of what we want to see in the next. There's 7 areas that we would like to see in the next plan of conservation development for the Conservation Commission, but there's nothing that says that we can't, from this groups, do the same thing and coordinate that through the planning staff and then in coordination. And so I think there's opportunities there that are going to be coming up here in the very near future here, where the Conservation Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission will be meeting jointly to come up and have a meeting. And so maybe we should participate in that also as a consideration.
I've got a bit more to add to that. So as the planning department, we're going to try to do things a bit differently than we have in the past with plans of conservation development, where we have in the past, we would, invite people to come to the meetings here at Town Hall and try to get their input on various aspects. We're actually going to go out to the community and do sort of a listening and, maybe have discrete topics and have meetings on those topics before we even start talking about what the recommendations are going to be in that document. We anticipate doing this public outreach probably over the next, starting in January or February, for about 6 months or so before the consultant that at some point we will hire for it actually gets going. So we can kind of hear what some folks in the community have to say, people who have not participated in the past. So we're trying to reach out to different neighborhoods, different demographics.
Excellent. That's, sounds like an improvement for sure.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, any more comments or questions about the P O C D? Okay, so now we go back up, this on my copy here, to Complete Streets Advisory Committee review of Connecticut DOT activities and planning. And I added this because this is always something that is a challenge. Like I mentioned earlier, knowing what the DOT is doing in your community is a challenge because the department is so large. It has so many different divisions, and each division is focused on a particular part of the transportation infrastructure. So you've got bridges. So a bridge division is interested in the Mystic Drawbridge, for example, and there's a upcoming project. What I understand, Greg, correct me if you've heard otherwise, is that it has to do with just working on the counterweights on the bridge and not really anything
Yeah,
else.
I haven't even heard of any project.
Okay, so I'm ahead of you on that. So it's a counterweight. Maybe they're just going to fine tune. Maybe it's every so many years they go in and they recalibrate the counterweights. That keeps the, you know, the equilibrium balanced. There's been discussion mostly coming from Bike Stonington about creating or retrofitting that bridge with bike lanes, which would be these kind of lightweight panels that would be attached to the grid of the metal grate grids to make it safer for bikes to cross. But that hasn't really gotten any traction yet. Another one is the intersection with Ring Drive and Grassotech and Route 1, the signal upgrade. And our congressional rep, Andre Baumgartner, sent me the plan for that and asked me if this is something that that our committee should be looking into. And I looked at it, and from my understanding, DOT is going around the state and they are upgrading as much as they possibly can the signals at the intersections to improve the pedestrian crossing signals, to change the heads so that they're more visible. And there's also the countdown timer that tells the person crossing how many seconds they have left, you know, to safely get across, and to exchange the signal heads with ones that are much more visible, because the old fashioned ones, just, you lose them in the glare of the sunlight. For example, and the new ones have a black surrounding panel with like a yellow border, and that makes, and the signal is brighter, and it just makes it a lot more visible. That helps prevent, you know, red light running. And so that's just a project that DOT is implementing across the state, as far as I understand, and that's what they're doing here. And I don't know if there's anything about that project that we should be talking to DOT about. I think they're the experts when it comes to crossings, and they've improved their approach. So I don't see any reason for us to be concerned. John, I think you were aware of that.
Yeah.
And do you agree that they're taking care of it as well?
Yeah.
They should. Yeah. There was another reference to the other intersection though, that's west of there, that I haven't seen any plans for. It's the one that comes out of the Midway Oval. And there is it's at the entrance to Pequannock.
Yeah, the Klein Plains
Park.
Park and Central Avenue, they,
Central
the same thing there. That-
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think they still have to do some more. Yeah, they did the handicap ramps, but I think they're still replacing the signal heads and
Okay,
the pedestrian heads and,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
Like you said, they kind of pick various intersections. They'll usually send us a plan, ask us for comments or something.
okay,
You know,
All
if
right.
you guys are interested, we can bring those. I mean, these we got a long time ago, and like you said.
right. So we're
Unless it's
just
something
catching-
obvious, we
Okay.
don't really comment on.
Right. So we're just getting caught up on this. Staying on Route 1, at the Depot Road Route 1 intersection, there's been new sidewalk construction on Route 1 leading into that intersection.
Yeah, that was the town project.
That's a town project.
Yeah, That was
Okay,
part of our, we've been setting aside money every year in the budget for infill sidewalks.
uh-huh,
And we're kind of working on Route 1. We have in fact, in front of Aquatic Plains, we've got a design underway now to do from Ring Drive up to the entrance to Aquatic Plains and that one, and also up on Kings Highway and Bridge Street on Route 1. There's also some missing sidewalks there.
okay,
So we've got, some projects underway in design, but yeah, that one across from Town Hall that we built, just finished like a month ago.
right. That's fantastic, because that's been a difficult gap, because a lot of people are walking on that side of the road. And now they have a sidewalk.
Yes.
And there are, at that intersection, there are the appropriate signal heads for pedestrians and vehicles. So,
Yeah, they just replaced those, I think, not too long ago.
okay, that's good.
Brian, yeah, I just,
Sure.
back to the Ring Drive and Route 1
Can you
intersection.
push the?
Yeah.
Back closer.
Going back to the Ring Drive and Route 1 intersection, my only concern is to make sure that DOT is well aware that there are a lot of pedestrians that use that intersection, or, with the campus situation that we have at the top of the hill now with the high school, the middle school, and with Grasso. Many kids routinely walk back and forth in the morning and the afternoon to go to Paquonic Plains, to go home, to go to the convenience store. It's used a lot. So if there's any way to make sure that the timer is set so that you can get, the pace of a teenager crossing a street, make sure the timer is long enough that you can get kids crossing appropriately, because there are times when there are a ton of kids just going
Right.
back and forth.
Right.
So if we could just convey that, or maybe it's already been conveyed. Thank you.
Greg, do you know if that was taken into account?
I have not looked at the exact timing, but we can take a look at that, because I know, with Sutton Park there and, the schools, it is heavily, I see kids crossing there all the time, so.
And the traffic authority, which is me and Chief Pizarro, can also request adjustments too, once they're usually pretty good at coming back out and looking at that. Obviously, it's better up front, but
Right.
if we're not satisfied with it.
Thank you.
So the department, the DOT, has been conducting what they call vulnerable users safety study. And they have been determining where to employ what are called proven safety measures or countermeasures. And these are things that reduce crashes and reduce injuries. And one of them that is, I think, become standard practice for signals. It's referred to as the leading pedestrian interval. And my understanding is when someone engages the crossing button to cross, it will red light all four legs of an intersection if it's a four-way intersection, and give the pedestrian time to get out into the street before it gives the other, the typical green light a green light, so that the pedestrian is now much more visible, because they didn't just step off the curb as somebody is flying through the intersection. So I wouldn't be surprised if these signals have a leading
Yeah,
interval.
they do have, it is a four-way red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop.
Okay, so they are, it's really encouraging. I'm on the state board and the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Board, so DOT is giving us presentations and updates. And we've had the lead for this vulnerable user safety project now in the previous 2 months has been at our meetings. These meetings are open to the public, by the way. If any of you are interested, I can forward the invite. The next meeting is Friday this week, if you're interested, and we're going to hear about. So this, I think it would be great if many of you could make it as possible, but it is a Friday morning. It's a 9 o'clock meeting, but we will have a rep from DOT explaining the recent Complete Streets Design Directive that was issued by the commissioner, and how the department is incorporating their own projects as complete streets projects. So every internal DOT project now is going to have to include complete streets measures, and the process for waiving those measures has become very strict and very challenging. So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, we can't accommodate sidewalks or bike lanes anymore. It really has to be an extreme situation for that not to happen. So that's all very good news with respect to DOT. And I think I just got one more. No, I got two more on DOT. One is a project that's been ongoing for a while. It's on Route 215 down at BB Cove. There's a culvert. You would never have known anything about this if it hadn't begun to fail. And now this culvert is beginning to fail. And what DOT is going to do is they're going to repair it. And in the process of repairing it, they're going to widen the road there a little bit. So this is where the entrance to Mystic River Homes, the congregate living facility, is on the uphill side. And you've got Brook Street comes down to the south. It's that stretch in there, and there's a marsh. Anderson
Marsh, this one belongs to Avalonia, and then Groton
Yeah.
Open Space owns the water edge.
Yeah. And so they're kind of going to take things apart and put it back together. And in the process of doing so, Bike Groton had an opportunity to intervene or to comment back when they were doing the design, thanks to Andre again, Baumgartner and Kate Rattan at the COG. And we impressed upon them the need to provide for bicycle and improved pedestrian facilities there. Even though it's a relatively short segment, it's still part of a corridor that's heavily used. And so the road gets widened a little bit to provide a 5-foot paved shoulder. Currently, it's only a couple of feet, that, and everything gets expanded side to side a little bit, so that if someday in the future more of the roadway can be improved, you don't have a bottleneck. And that seems to be a big problem, where projects happen independent of any overall comprehensive planning, and they don't account for future bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and then they become a bottleneck that just can shut down a future project. So I think at least in the southeast region, the COG with Kate Rattan are very interested in culvert replacement projects. There's more of them than you imagine, and they are critical when they're being repaired, when this kind of repair work is going on, that they account for bike and pedestrians. So you've got that the bridge division, you've got a culvert division, you've got a vendor in place paving programs called the VIP program, where every 15 to 20 years, state roads are resurfaced. And there's been a lot of pressure on DOT to open up the VIP program so that communities can have more input, and so that there can be more time spent in advance, possibly in the interest of restriping for bike lanes or doing things that would just be low cost improvements as part of that repaving. And DOT has been opening the door, I think, to letting that happen. And now the last issue, or the last project that it's not really a project, it's more of a survey that you forwarded that email to me from Kate, that came from Craig Babowitz. Are you comfortable going into that detail? No, a little bit. Okay. No, but I mean, can I do that?
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. So there's a complete streets planning division now in DOT. It's headed up by a very competent engineer who comes to all of the bike head advisory board meetings, and he's looking around the state apparently at state routes that could be improved for bicycle facilities easily. So this is, I think, flowing from the commissioner's directive to incorporate bicycle and pedestrian improvements wherever possible. And he contacted Kate Rattan, who's our regional transportation planner up at the COG in Norwich, and said, I'm looking at Route 215 in Stonington. He met Groton. He's still trying to find his bearings here. From its intersection with Route 1, which is up at the top of Fort Hill, down to where it turns and heads into Noack. So that's a section we're all familiar with. It's got a 40-mile-per-hour speed limit. It's got like 8-foot or 10-foot shoulders on both sides. And it could easily be structured designed for bike lanes, protected bike lanes or buffered bike lanes. So a buffered bike lane just means that there's a strip between the roadway and the beginning of the bike lane, where the white line now is, that's striped off for no one. You're not supposed to drive in it. You shouldn't ride your bike in it. It's just a buffer that gives the bike lane separation, and it makes for a safer facility on the same pavement. And so, that would be relatively simple to implement. It would just be striping and bike lane signage. But Kate Rattan pointed out in her email exchange, which she forwarded, and then I received a copy of it, is that there's a lot going on that segment. There's issues of speeding. The 40 miles per hour is rarely obeyed. There's a lot of cycling activity. There's mountain biking in Haley Farm. There's a trail crossing between Haley Farm and Mortimer Wright Preserve at the top of Brook Street. That's getting more and more, and that's on the Crosstown Greenway crosses there as well. There's the high school, the middle school, so you could have more and more students on that section of road. There's open space on both sides. So a trailhead at the Brook Street intersection where that crossing would be something that DOT could do if they wanted to, because I think they own that property. So there's a lot more than just striping that I think could be done to improve a corridor like that. So it's just very encouraging to see that DOT is looking around. And I think it could be a project for us as part of the Complete Streets and Trails plan to identify more of these places in our town where we want DOT to pay attention. And I think of several on my side of town, Mystic Noank, there's Allen Street, which is Good State Road. And there are other places like that.
Brian, I remember Kate also talking about the fact that municipalities are making a pitch now and pitching projects, and maybe this is something that the town of Groton could pitch to DOT.
Sure. Which the towns now have the ability to set lower speed limits on local roads. And you may have more insight on this, but traditionally or to date, the law in Connecticut, as I understand it, is that the minimum statutory speed limit is 25 miles per hour. And that there you can post a slower speed limit, but you can't ticket someone for going, say, if you post a 15 mile per hour speed limit and they're going 20.
Well, we can't even post it at this point unless you're one of those municipalities that goes to the law. There's 3 right now doing it.
Okay, that's
and then
where
you,
I was.
and you have to do every road. You can't pick and choose. If you take it over, you take over liability for all the roads for monitoring, putting signs up. You have to have studies showing why you're setting, you still have to, there's quite a bit to it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I thought you could just cherry pick a road and
no,
just say,
no,
oh,
Because we tried with 215, didn't we?
yeah, we tried multiple times.
Right.
Yeah.
okay. Well, it's not
Hartford,
as simple as I thought it would be.
I know City of Hartford is one of the 3. I forget offhand.
So we want to let them go through the process and learn from their mistakes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. Another thing that the new laws on pedestrian safety allow, and I don't think any municipality has implemented this yet, is what's called a pedestrian safety zone. Does that sound familiar? And it's the ability to designate, say, downtown Mystic as a pedestrian safety zone. And I think you have to do some studies and you have to justify it. And then you are then eligible for more funding and for more flexibility. So that might be something that we can also look into, because downtown Mystic is quite obvious as a place where there's high pedestrian activity, but maybe even the center of Groton on Route 1 could
Yeah, I
also
think
be
I would like
considered.
to aspire to more pedestrian activity in that area. Like even places that maybe don't have it because it's not a great area, but it could be cooler to have more pedestrian
sure.
activity.
That's, I think, one of our goals is to increase pedestrian activity everywhere. All right, so that's I think that's the entire agenda, right? We covered it. It's 4:20. Nice job. So is there any other comments or questions? Not, we can adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second. Third.
Accepted. Great, good job, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Brody.
We'll see
Good
you
talk
in
to you.
January.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure.